Hello, good evening, and welcome to That's the Spirit, episode 13, with myself and our very special guest this evening, Karen A Dahlman. As always, our show is fully interactive, so please let us know where you are in the world and where you're watching this evening. And also, as the show unfolds, please feel free to pop any questions or comments you may have in the comments section on the right-hand side. It's going to be a very special show this evening, one which we're going to be discussing a lot about communication within the Ouija board. But before we introduce our guest, if I could ask you to help us spread the love of That's the Spirit and hit the share button on the right-hand side below this video, it would be fantastic. We'd be immensely grateful, and we'd also spread the love. So if you could do that for us now, that would be absolutely fantastic. And also, if you want to pop your name in the live comment section, I will try and get as many of you up as we possibly can. And a little bit later on, around about 9:45, 45 minutes time, we'll also have an interactive questions and answer session. So you're more than likely to put your questions to Karen a little bit later on. So without further ado, let's get on with the show and introduce our illustrious guest this evening, the very special Karen A Dahlman. Karen is a director of the Talking Board Historic Society, a channel for spirit guides, and the author of The Spirits of Ouija, 4 Decades of Communication. As a leading Ouija practitioner, she's been using the Ouija board since 1973 with outstanding results. Karen teaches ways to connect with the afterlife, the higher self, and sentient beings that exist amongst us within these unseen dimensions. Within her messages, Karen shares the positive side to the Ouija board as a tool for exploring the expansive realms of consciousness. She helps others to discover and unlock their greater selves, including their extrasensory perceptions, and engage these within the world. Karen has been featured on Gaia's show Beyond Belief and as a recurring guest on Coast to Coast AM radio, Fade to Black, and the UK's Unexplained. Well, there's a lot to say there for a wonderful lady, so I'm no more to do. I'm going to get her onto the show. Please welcome Karen. Karen, how are you?
Doing great. How are you, Julian? It's great to see you.
Great to see you as well, and thanks for coming on. And you're based over in California. So tell the viewers where you're coming to us from.
I'm coming from sunny Southern California. It's 72 degrees here. It's always sunny. It's always pretty much the same weather. And it's a beautiful day out here. So I'm really in between Los Angeles and San Diego, kind of in a little beach town right in between the two.
Yeah, it's. I love San Diego. It's one of my favorite places. There's a wonderful place. I live in Wales and in Cardiff, and there's a wonderful place in San Diego called Cardiff by the Sea.
Yeah.
And it's. I was fortunate to go there once, and it was absolutely delightful. Well, we've got some people all over the world watching. We have Ron from Fort Lauderdale, and we have my sister actually from North Wales, and we also have Star White says, "Yay, it's Karen." So there's going to be lots of people coming on the show this evening. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Karen, because obviously, you know, there was a big introduction, and there's lots of things to do about the Ouija board, and I showed you this earlier on, so I'm just going to show everyone. My mouse mat is a Ouija board. I believe that they are there for positive influences, because in spirit there is no bad. It's all love, and we make up all these demons here on the earth. Evil was within the humans. But I'm not going to steal your thunder. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did it all start, and you know how you can help people.
Well, isn't that so what you just said? We tend to make up stories around things we don't fully understand, and other people do that too. So the Ouija board is probably one of the most stigmatized, controversial items out there we may use, or tools, if you want to call it that. I call it a tool. It's definitely not a game. And so we do ascribe all kinds of weird meanings to it. But I got started at a very, very young age with this tool. It was in 1973. I was 8 years old. But before that, before the tool came into my life, since the age of 2, I was able to experience other dimensions. I could see auras. I could see beings from different places, and I didn't quite understand it was from different places until later on. I got older. You know, hindsight's, gives you all kinds of perspective. But in retrospect, I realized they were what people would call my imaginary playmate. They weren't imaginary at all. They're very much spirit guides and beings that interact with me throughout my life. And in fact, throughout my life, they've worked with me in many ways. When I put them away and went to school, because I was told that you're not supposed to do that kind of things, although they were very much there for me. The Ouija board to that other dimension. So I did use the board for those reasons, to reach back into and communicate with the beings that I knew before. And fast forward many, many years, here we are. I'm in my 46th year of using this tool. I work with predominantly now a group of beings that are just called the guides. And they are a group of ethereal collective beings from source wisdom that come through every single time. And as I was explaining to Julian before, is that they are kind of what you might call the control if you do any kind of spiritualistic work, spiritualism or spiritism. Or I might call them the moderator of any kind of session I have. They come through first, and then they bring through the rest of the messages for everybody. But yeah, I've been using this tool with great results for many years. And as Julian mentioned, it's just a tool. And I do want to say this, and I'll show it to you. This one right here, this is the one I originally received from Santa Claus, December 25th, 1973. And it's just a tool. It's what I would call my permission slip to be able to reach into the other realms. That's all it does. It's really me that's doing this work. And I just use that as my excuse or my permission to do that.
It's amazing to think that board's actually older than me. So it looks as if it's in pristine condition.
It's in great shape, just like you.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, the check's in the post.
There you go.
There's a lot of bad stigma, isn't it, about the Ouija boards, and they've been used in things like, horror movies and all of those things as well. So there's a lot of people out there with this perception that evil gets attracted to Ouija boards, and you only deal with with low energies and those sort of things. Come on, let's smash it all up the park and tell us why you love using the Ouija board so much, and how much of a positive influence it's not only had on your life but others as well.
Well, let's just say this. Hollywood loves something good to use that's going to build up your adrenaline rush and get you going and make you think twice and scare you. And one of the most controversial tools out there is the Ouija board. So, of course, they ran with it. I got my board. This is my little joke. I got my board on December 25th, December from Santa Claus. December 26th, 1973, the day after, The Exorcist movie came out. So I beat it by like one day. Now, I didn't watch that movie till I was about 18 years old. So I was, 10 years later, I finally watched that movie. I thought it was such rubbish in terms of the portrayal of it. When you use a tool, you project onto your tools what it is you want to have. And so what I have found is it's my intentions. Although I started out using this tool not knowing what I was doing, there really are no rules come with these tools. A little bit on the back of the box. Back in the day when I got my board, it was on the back of the box. Originally, it was on the back of the board. It doesn't give you much more than sit across from a partner, male, female, preferred, ask your questions, and that's really about it. And be astonished by the amazing messages that come through. They don't talk about intention. They don't talk about looking at yourself for the answers within. They don't talk about building up your energy. There's so many pieces that go into using this tool. And when you use it under those auspices of intention, of your dedication to yourself, your own spiritual work, you begin to bring forth that which you are. That's what you attract to yourself. And that's what you end up creating in your reality. And that's what I've always just done. So for me, it's been a way to, like I said, to reach back and to reach some of these beings that I knew as a very young child, as well as the deceased. And then now to even push boundaries of consciousness, meaning you can speak to almost any sentient being that's out there that's willing to communicate back. And yes, this does include the deceased animals and all different types of beings that exist within the different realms. So it really can be a tool, a far-reaching tool, an expansive tool, and can teach you all about yourself and relationship and with the other dimensions and how we truly do exist within those dimensions at the same time. This gets very esoteric. It gets very esoteric and metaphysical.
But it's fantastic, and I'm so glad that we've got you on, and we're talking about, because for me, trying to raise the vibration of spirituality and getting people to understand that it's all done from a basis of love. Yeah. When you talk about perception and trying to take maybe some of the most negative perceptions and turn them into the biggest positive, the Ouija would be one of those things.
Yes.
So this is a very important conversation for me in terms of my personal roadmap to try and get people, to take away and debunk some of these myths, to get people to say, look, this really is about love. It is about, being nice, being good, and give love and be love and give love is some of my biggest mottos now. So, it is fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, the history of Ouija. Where did it all start? And have you got an old board?
I do have an old board. So I'll get to that in just a moment. I don't have it here to show you, but I will tell you this. The board, the talking board, let's just say that. Ouija board is a trademark name. That came out later. But talking board is kind of a generic umbrella term for all kinds of boards with numbers and letters on it. Yes, no, goodbye, all kinds of salutations. That would be considered a talking board or a spirit board. The first talking board, the rival of it, we know that it hit the United States in 1886. And we know this because there was all kinds of articles and newsletters back then considered viral if it was posted in some kind of like the Boston Globe or some kind of article or journal that was big back then. But it was first posted in 1886 that there was a board called the Witch Board, WITCH, Witch Board. And it was made by a company back in Massachusetts, W.S. Reed Company. And we know this board existed because they took their board, sent it to President Grover Cleveland with a note attached as a wedding gift. He was marrying his young bride and they wanted to give him a gift. They also saw this as an opportunity to take a copy of that letter and also send it over to the Boston Globe so they would publish it. And there, of course, the letter went viral. But the letter basically said, "Dear Sir, President of the United States, we present you this board and we hope that you will cherish it, blah, blah, blah." Well, the president received it, wrote back and said, "Dear sirs, we really do enjoy the ingenuity of this item you've created and crafted and sent to us. However, I don't think I will be consulted at any time for the state of affairs of the country." But we do have that letter. We do know it was sent. So we know that's the original first produced talking board in the United States. Now, fast forward to 1990, this is when the Ouija board was starting to be made. And it wasn't until 1991 that it actually received its patent and trademark from the United States Patent Office. And the board itself named itself. Now, many people think, and this is a wives' tale, they believe that the board means ja. Oui for French is yes, and ja for German, yes. That's not true. We have letters about this and documentation that says what it really means is they were sitting at the board one night. Charles Kennard Elijah Bond, who was the trademark attorney for this, or the patent attorney for the board, along with Miss Helen Peters. They were using the board and it started spelling out. And they said, "What should we call you?" And it spelled out Ouija. And they asked, "What does that mean?" And it spelled out good luck. So the board was patented under the name Ouija. And it was patented under also good luck. And that ever since then, they've been making the board. And Charles Kennard Novelty Company was the first to make the board, which eventually became William Folds. And then William Folds' family ran it until 1966 when they sold it to Parker Brothers. And I got to tell you, Julian, and everybody out there listening to this is really cool. And this will explain why Hollywood used this board in a lot of their movies going forward. So in 1966, Parker Brothers bought the board from the William Fold Company. When they bought it, their largest selling game of the day was Monopoly. 1 year later, in 1967, this board right here, this actually is 72 circa, so the board, a little earlier edition of this one, a little larger. It outsold Monopoly and sold 2 million copies first year in sales. That is huge. This is just to also give you an idea how this tool, this device, this game was in everybody's household. And so then when the Exorcist movie came out in 1973, December 26, of course, they capitalized upon that. And many other movies since then did, because they saw that it brought fear to people. It brought you the adrenaline rush. And that's what scary movies are supposed to do. So, Hollywood was kind of smart and capitalized on something that was out there.
And thank you for that, because it was a great potted history of the Ouija board. What's the oldest one you've got then?
Yeah, the oldest one I have is a circa 1892-93. So it's but 1 year after it was started being made, 1 or 2 years. We know the circa, we can tell by the way it looks, how it's manufactured, but to pinpoint that same year, it's kind of hard with some of the older boards. But that's my oldest one. And the original ones that came out were in 1891 when they were actually stamped with Ouija on it. There are some prototypes floating around out there, and I know the collectors who have them because we're all part of the Talking Board Historical Society, as Julian mentioned. So please, you guys, if you want to learn more about the history, start there at our website, tbhs.org.
I think we lost you a little bit there. Can you just give that web address again, please?
Sure. I think I froze up a little bit. TBHS.org stands for Talking Board Historical Society. And from there, you'll find a lot of links. You'll learn about our group and what we do, as well. You'll learn about our group and what we do, as well as the other members and how we preserve the history of the Talking Board.
Perfect. Tell me a little bit about experience about, when you started using it for the first time. When did you have that, like, oh, wow. And when did it give you sort of the first real evidence and information that you personally quantify yourself to say, wow, this is amazing. I didn't know this, and the board's told me something that I didn't know, type thing.
It's so amazing because I really did not know. I mean, I kind of maybe heard of it before. It's like, I remember it was like a game. I really didn't know much about it until a couple little girlfriends down the street. One was 8 and was our older sister who was 2 years older. And they brought me down to their house, said, we're going to play some games, which is normal. We pull out the games underneath their bed, play Monopoly, Candyland, pick up sticks, Barrel of Monkeys, all the fun stuff, Tiddlywinks. And they pull out something that looked like this, the same circa. They pull it out of the box, and they sit down with their fingers on the planchette, and it starts moving around. And I thought, this is stupid. What are you guys doing? Pushing it? I mean, this is dumb. They said, no, we speak to ghosts. I'm like, oh, sure you do. And, I used to see them. I see ghosts. I used to hear them. But I thought, I was told that wasn't real. People are making this up. I thought, no way. Well, they sat down and started using it, and they said, here, try it. And so I put my hands on the planchette, and I wasn't pushing it, and I let it move, and I thought, oh, they've got to be pushing it. And so I wasn't quite sure until they said, watch this. And the two of them started using the planchette, and they started getting a message, and the message spelled back basically all kinds of stuff about the little girls. But I asked, who are you talking to? And they said, this is our dead sister. Now, I didn't even know they had a dead sister. Apparently, the elder girl in the room, who was 10 at the time, her twin died shortly after birth, like within a week or two. So they got this board game, they called it back then, a board, a few years earlier from their parents. And unbeknownst to their parents, they would talk to their deceased sister, who, the most amazing thing was this, Julian, and everybody out there listening, was that they were talking to their deceased sister, and yet this deceased sister was now 10 years old too. She was growing up on the other side, and they were communicating with her. So I got to talk with her. To me, that was more amazing than seeing or talking to ghosts, because I've already had that experience myself. It was the fact that they're growing up. There was a life. Life continued on. And this is something that sat with me forever. I ran home, told my parents, and I said, guess what? It's true. The afterlife exists. You continue on. You can communicate with them. And then my parents are like, wink, wink, sure. I said, don't worry. Santa Claus will believe me, and I'll ask Santa Claus for a board. And that's when I got my board that year, 1973. Because that really stuck with me, the fact that there was this continuation of life. And what I've learned since then, when I work with the guides, who I simply call the guides, the beings I communicate with, they say there is no such thing as death, although we understand the words you use. They say, we want to tell you that there's just life after life after life. It's a continuation of your spirit, of your energy. It just changes form. And in that sense, you never, ever cease to exist. And as you said, Julian, so eloquently, is that it all is based upon love. And love is that vibration that carries you through everything.
Amen. It is amazing, though, isn't it? How times have changed, really. And I know the ages you're talking about. Can you imagine now a 10-year-old running into your house and asking for a Ouija board for Christmas, or that she'd been down a friend's house and she'd been speaking to a sister who'd passed over, one of the twins. Times have changed, haven't they? But I think a lot of that is sad in many ways, that again, this sort of communication and this sort of behavior has been sort of put in the cupboard and said, this is wrong and you shouldn't be doing it. But you know, can you give us some instances about, you know, how you've helped people develop themselves through the messages they've received through the Ouija board?
Absolutely. So my big thing that I do, it's not so much teaching people how to use a Ouija board, although I do that if people are interested. I do help people learn to use it in ways that they'll get great results. But my goal really with all the work that I do is to help people to awaken these abilities within themselves. As I mentioned earlier, this Ouija board, this planchette is just a permission I use. It's just the channel or vessel I use to really use and awaken my own abilities within. One of the incredible byproducts I found from using this tool, and I teach anybody that starts to use it too, is really your own development of your spiritual gifts. And all of us have these to some degree. Some of us come in a little more open with them. I know I came in very open to a lot of these abilities, or telepathy, or being able to see things or hear things. But a lot of people have that. They came as a child too. They just shut it down. And I try to help people to reawaken this. And what I say when we start to reawaken this stuff, and I've learned this from using the tool, is you start to rely more on yourself to sense the subtle energies for example, as you're using the planchette, or to weed through the messages, or to raise your vibration to reach the intended recipients who you want to communicate with. It's all about working with your internal energies. And in doing this, you start to waken up your telepathy, your clairsenses, your ability to be more empathic and intuitive. And so what I've found through my own work doing this, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been moving my work off the board more and more. And so what I do now is I do a direct voice channeling of the beings, or I have them come through. And that was just a progression of working with them through the board, and then working with them through journaling, working with them through dreams, working them through meditations and visualizations, and now through the voice. So I find this becomes a way to start developing yourself. And so that's my goal, is to help people reawaken themselves and learn that these unseen dimensions and realms that you've been told you're not supposed to touch that or do that it really isn't scary. It's really the place from whence you came and to where you will return again. It's all spirit. And that's what you are a part of. That's what we all are a part of. And there's nothing scary. There's nothing bad or evil or negative. It's all, as you said, based in love. It's all a positive experience to be able to work and navigate these dimensions. And I teach people not to be afraid of that, and to really rely on your own core within yourself, so you can strengthen that, so you don't have those fears anymore.
Layla says, times have only changed due to the media. The true foundations have always stayed the same. So it is true, isn't it? The media perception of the way in which, you know, spirituality, and obviously the Ouija board again portrayed in a lot of the things we see on the film. So tell me, without going obviously into people's names, etc., but can you give us an instance whereby, you know, working the Ouija has actually made a big difference to somebody's life through some development or some information or some news or along those lines?
Oh, very much so. What I find is people a lot of times will come to us, whether it's we do live sessions on YouTube, and I do them on a lot of radio shows, and also do private sessions. But people come to us with some kind of, I'll say the number one thing is closure from death. Most people think the board is only used for that kind of death, communicating with a loved one. And definitely it's a great place to use or to start. And so I find a lot of people just want to get that last message or last contact or a message sent to them from their loved ones. And that's what I find has really been the most healing for people. Although there's some very specific things. For example, I had somebody come to me recently about, of all things, a business idea and where that business idea was going. And that he really felt like he was, let's just say this, kind of screwed by some business partners in the past. But when he's interacting with the guides, as they were talking to him via the Ouija board, coming through spelling and giving him messages, they basically told him in the middle of the message, go Google it, go Google this right now, Google this thing. And they told him what to Google. He Googled it, and sure enough, it was the name of his company that they had relinquished, and he was able to go pick back up again. There's little things like that that happen that come through, but that was huge for him because that was his livelihood. It was his business. And he was able to begin to develop that again. So they come through and they bring all kinds of messages. People will say they'll help them their spirit guides they talk to through the board might help them find their keys that they can't find, might help them find some misplaced money. Those are just commonplace. But the reason why I use it is really to help people to learn that they are really strong, empowered people within, and to pull those abilities out. And so the guides will always talk to them about how they can access that and give them concrete ideas of how to do that. And when people start practicing those ideas, they always come back to me and say, oh my God, this has happened. Or I've been able to now myself, without the board, be in contact with my grandmother. I've received these messages. So it becomes a way to just tap back in, tune into these other dimensions and learn to do it yourself. The guides that I work with, their big thing is not becoming a crutch for you. It's so they try to push you heavily in these directions so we can do. I think, to me, helpful things that anybody gets out of this to walk away and say, wow, I really am empowered, and I really can start to tune in to my deceased pets, my deceased family members, the other dimensions, my higher self. The higher self is a big thing they teach. They really want to teach you to tap into that part of yourself that's larger than you, that exists beyond your corporal existence, so that you too can have such great wisdom and ideas coming to you that help you in your life. I will say this, Julian, excuse me, I will say this. When I write my books, I work with the help of the guides. I work with the help of my higher self. They come through and start channeling a lot of the information from such a divine place. And then I read it back and I go, what? And I have to go do the research to find out how this really works. And then I'm surprised. I shouldn't be saying I'm surprised. It always is amazing. I love it. The messages they give me and how they're on cutting edge stuff, whether it's related to science, whether it's related to consciousness, whether it's related to just working with these other dimensions, whether it's doing spirit communication. They have such great ideas. And then I go back and read about it, learn about it, research. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. And so that kind of stuff usually goes in my books. So it's a little ahead of the curve of what's out there on spirit communication.
Whilst we're out there debunking myths, and obviously, we go back and I keep talking about the films and the perception of the Ouija board. And of course, there's that, that stereotypical opening of, putting your finger then go, is there anybody there?
Yeah, right.
It's that sort of things, and in particular, the opening of a Ouija board. Do you have a specific way of opening, or have you changed that over time? Is this something that you've experimented with? Do you have more success in another, or is it just now finger on off to go?
Yeah, I think it's important with any kind of sacred work you do. I consider this sacred work. I feel honored to be a mouthpiece or a channel for the guides. And I also feel honored to do any work when I bring through any kind of being that has a message to give. So I see it as sacred. And when I say you do any kind of sacred work, whether it's, working with a client, I used to be a psychotherapist for years. And whether I was working with them in therapy or hypnosis or you're a shaman, anytime you do any kind of sacred work, you want to have an opening and a closing to that space. And so I developed this over the years. A lot of the way I approach the board does come out of my background as a therapist. And also comes out of my training with different types of indigenous cultures, and different belief systems that I brought into it from different theosophies and philosophies. So I kind of put it together in a hodgepodge, and it works really well for me. So it has shifted over the years. In the beginning, not having any rules or how to use this tool, it was just a matter of put my fingers on the planchette. Hey, who's here? Who could talk to us? I did that for several years until I started realizing that I could get somebody to come through who was more consistent. And then I developed them into my control. And that kind of control is what I said, control. That one on the other side who can help us, be the master and mistress of ceremony or the gatekeeper. And so that developed on its own. And from that, then I started exploring the different dimensions and what happens in the afterlife and what happens in between lives and reincarnation. And if that's even a factor in all this and how that works. And this is when I was still in college. But as I progressed myself and started learning and teaching myself more things about such as protection, such as about a sacred space, such as about learning to work with the energies and how to open that into the energies and how to open yourself for the energies and also how to close it back down to move back into your regular everyday life, I started augmenting different kinds of practices with my techniques. And so what I do now, what I think is important, and I say this to anybody that wants to use this tool, is number one, why do you want to use it? And then if you know why you want to use it, what are your intentions behind using it for those reasons? For example, I want to use it because I want to communicate with deceased loved ones that I just really want to have an opportunity to talk with them again. Okay, great. What are your intentions? Well, my intentions are to reach those beings. I'm going to reach them with love. I'm going to reach out to them and find them in that space of love. So that becomes kind of your prayer, your mantra, and that becomes the way you enter into the sacred space. If you open a sacred space with the prayer, breath, any kind of exercise that allows you to feel grounded and centered within yourself, not out here, but in yourself first, and then by stating your intentions up and give it to the universe and to spirit, it's like you allow that to be empowered and you put the energy out there and you tend to get back what it is that you're asking for. And by the way, you guys, this is how I use what I call my great cosmic phone. Is I dial up the frequencies through my intentions. So when I make my intentions, I would like to reach the guides of the highest good, of those that love us with unconditional love and have the best interest at our heart. Right there, I shifted my vibration by saying that. It raises my frequency, and frequency is like dialing up a phone, pushing numbers on your mobile phone to pull in who's going to answer. And so that's how I do it. You do it through the vibration. And that in itself is stepping into a sacred space. Now, once I'm in there, I consider that space holy, if you will. I consider it dedicated in its sanctity. It's a place where we can commune and communicate with these energies and allow them to speak, and which I get a chance to interact with them and they interact with us. And then when I'm done, I simply close that space, which I think is important. You always want to close your space with a thank you, with a prayer of gratitude, with a way of saying, I'm honoring that place where you and I communed. It's like saying namaste, as you say in yoga or other kinds of teachings. I treat it no differently. And then when I do that, I allow myself to close that and to then move back into my day and not feel like I'm just leaving things lingering or I didn't have a chance to really say my goodbyes. I mean, for example, when we close here, we're going to say goodbye to everybody that's here listening and watching. I'm going to say goodbye to Julian. He's going to say goodbye to me. And it's just out of etiquette and respect. I find that in the world of spirit and in the world of corporeal existence, respect and showing that courtesy and giving gratitude goes a long way. So it goes a long ways in this realm, and it goes a long way in other dimensions too. And I find that sends out that vibration that'll attract that back to you. So it's a win-win. So you open it, if I can say two things, you open it under these kinds of energies, under this kind of intention, and then you close it under the same. And then you end it that way, and then you go back about your day. And the energy is like you created this bubble, this sphere, and it's sacred, and it stays in that holistic ability. So when you want to open it up again, you can step back into it. Every time I do this work, the guides are there like that. Like right now, because I'm talking about the work, they're here. They're here right now because I've already shifted my energy as I'm talking about this to be able to communicate this to you on this level. If that makes sense.
It makes huge amounts of sense. It's interesting as well, is because, we've all got our own ways of doing things. And, I probably say this every week. So if somebody's watching, they're probably, maybe sick to death of me saying it. But some of the things you talk about there is so fundamental to the way in which I work as a medium, which is creating that space and then setting the intention and feeling and changing the energy and the vibration, then to be able to communicate with spirit, is very much the same way as I'm teaching now. And it's not a new way of doing it, but when you actually break it down and look at it in a different way, it just becomes so obvious and so succinct that it just runs away with it. So whether it's using the Ouija board or whether it's just being and connecting spirit that way, it's just because, again, part of what I always advocate is that connection with self is I believe you cannot connect with spirit unless you connect with self. Okay. And you've got to be with yourself. It's like, we talked about your cell phone. You can't make a phone call on your cell phone if you haven't got a signal. You are the signal. And that's where you connect with yourself. You get into that place. you create the space, you set your intention, you feel the energy change, and off you go. And it's funny you saying that now. I feel people coming here now. So, you know, it is about changing that vibration and unhooking in. So if somebody tomorrow says, okay, tell me one reason why I should go and buy a Ouija board. Why should I ask Santa, okay, for a Ouija board? What would be one of the main reasons you would say, get it on your Santa's list?
Well, I would say if you're curious and you're an explorer and you want to discover other dimensions, this is probably one of the easiest ways to do it. One of the ways to quickly move into those realms. Having said that, I'm definitely not, I will say this, I'm not an advocate to say everybody go out and get a Ouija board. Although, if they're interested, I do enjoy teaching it because I feel like the work I've done over the years, I've really learned the do's, the don'ts, the trials, the tribulations. I've put the energy and work and effort into it to get it to the level where it's like you can have this incredible in conversation with your higher self. In fact, if anybody does get a board, this is what I always tell people, Julian, and everybody out there listening, is I say, don't just ask for anybody to come through. I always either spirit angels, which I has your best interest at heart. It could be a deceased loved one, but I always say this caveat: who has my best interest at heart. So just because somebody passes over, I like to call it transition to another state of being. You know, we're human and we can be stuck in our past behaviors, and a lot of times it's hard to shift those. And so they may still have an element of that personality. But when there is this moving through this other space, you kind of drop the falses and you get to see more of who you really are and understand a lot more about yourself. So there is this element of evolution, if you will. And there definitely is a evolving in a time of evolution when you're on the other side to keep learning and growing. So you can reach out to those loved ones who have your best interest at heart. But I say really get focused here and pick one of those four. I always like to say, try to go right to your higher self, because that's talking to you. It's talking to you, greater part of you, that part of you that is connected back to spirit source. It's your divine self. And it's your part of you that exists in all these different dimensions. And I purposely hook into that first before I do any writing, before I come on the show, before I talk to the spirit guides. And the guides talk about it as plugging into the outlet of your higher self. And when you do that, you can bring in the wisdom that much more. And this is what it's all about to me. Ouija board. Okay, so you're asking, should people go out and get one for Christmas? If they get one, why? Well, this has been a tool that will help you do that, to tap into your higher self. Probably more than a lot of other tools that might take a little more time and refinement and more work at. This, you can go right to it. And what I like about the tool is you get tangible results you feel as the planchette pulls you. Subtly, the energy pulls you around. And when that energy pulls you around, you get that the physical sensation, you get that touch, the tactile, tangible feeling, and you go, oh, that's what my higher self feels like. And so I get really excited talking about this because when the different beings come through, they have what I call spirit signatures, and I can tell who's coming through by the way they move the planchette, because this is over many, many years now. And that to me is very exciting. But whether you believe the Ouija board works or not, or you think it's maybe just your ideomotor, which means your fine muscle movements controlled by your brain through a subconscious reaction, allowing the planchette to move, that's okay. I'm not opposed to that, because when I talk to my higher self, by the way, you guys, I am channeling a part of myself. So yeah, that's a part of it. But I also feel, though, when I'm also channeling the guides who are external to me, there's an element of them that I feel very familiar with. And it feels like a part of me too. So when they pull that planchette around, I follow it, I feel it consciously, and it pulls my fingers, and I stay with it, and I get that sensation of them, and it becomes tangible. And so the board is nice for those reasons. You know, number one, talk to your higher self. Number two, talk to the spirit guides and beings that have your best interest at heart. And number three, you get that experience that's so physical, and you don't necessarily get that with a lot of other media you use. You might get that with pendulum or dowsing rods, but you get it in solid ways, and that's probably why. One of the main reasons why the board has stuck with me over all these years, for going on 46 years.
It's amazing. And I've already just put my list in the chimney to go up to Father Christmas, because if my wife is watching, I'd like a Ouija board, please. And I'd like one from 1973, please?
Yeah,
I'm only gonna
this one was first came out in circa 1972. Mine is actually 1973, because we talked about that. So this one was made through, I think, 1980-ish, early 80s, 80, I think it was. Then they kind of changed it. This is a masonite board. I love it because it's durable. And I got to tell you, this is the board I use most of the time. Although recently I did get a William Full board that's 1950, 60. It's a larger size board, 22 inches. So it's a lot bigger. It's like this. And I'm using that now more on my shows because the planchette has more room on the edges. Where it could fall off on this board. And so I like to use that larger board. But this board I've been using, you guys, religiously for all these years. I love it. So yes, I hope your wife gets you a board because I think you would do wonders with it.
I hope so too. Let people know where people could watch you doing this. When do you have your shows, and what channels do you use, and how can people interact with Karen A Dahlman?
Well, you can find me in my work if you want to see live stuff and the messages we bring forward. I work with my partner, Rodney, who does a lot of this work with me, and I do some things on my own as well. But I'm on my YouTube channel. Look up either Karen A Dahlman or Creative Visions TV. Make sure it says Karen A Dahlman as well. Put the A in there. That's important. Karen A Dahlman. And you will find, I think I have 180 videos now. I have a whole series I did with my buddy. A lot of you guys know her, Marla Martinson. She's a Beverly Hills matchmaker and also a crystal Reiki healer. And she loves the board. And she and I did a whole series called The Women of Ouija. And on there, it's a little fun ditty, kind of slapstick at time, but we're serious about the information we give. We just make it fun. And quick, short little videos about how to use the board, how we work it, what you can do, giving you suggestions and tips. And then I created a show it'll be 2 years in April, this show, and it's called Creative Visions TV Beyond the Board. And there I interview a lot of people who are navigating the unseen dimensions. They share the way they do it. They're usually very creative people, intuitive people, empathic people, people that are working in these realms. They may use Ouija boards, they may not. They don't even necessarily have to be a proponent of Ouija boards. But then I also do a series on there too with my partner, Rodney, and we do a lot of sessions. So you guys, if you want to join our live sessions, or when you submit your questions to the guides, we pull them out of a hat and we will answer your questions. Well, the guides will answer your questions and you get to watch us bring in the guides and the messages they give to you. We do that sometimes in real time, through Google Hangouts, through YouTube, or we do it pre-recorded and bring it back to you. So yeah, go check it out. I have a new video coming out tomorrow, as a matter of fact. It's my holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's video. That's coming out tomorrow. Yeah, come join me, come subscribe. I'd love to see you there. I'm all over social media, you guys, under Karen A Dahlman. If you reach out to me on Facebook, it's probably better to send me a private message, and then I will see you, and then I'll be able to connect with you better that way. But I'm all over the place. So thanks for asking. Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, maybe we can do a Karen A Dahlman special and get a live Ouija board in the future, and we'll get you back on, and we can, we can do something live here on That's the Spirit, maybe.
We would love to. We do live shows on other shows. We do them on radio shows, believe it or not. There's dead air. Ta-da. And then we can do it on your show. We love to. We've done it on some podcast shows. Every time, it's the guides that come through and they'll bring through your messages from your loved ones. One of the big things that we love doing, I really enjoy this a lot, is the animal communication. We spend a lot of time talking to the different animals, wild animals as well as your pets, as well as my pets, and all kinds of animals. They come through and talk to us.
We actually had one of the world's most famous animal communicator, a woman called P. Horsley, on the other day, and she did an animal meditation. True, this is she did an animal meditation, and I did it. And I have a dog called Reggie, and in the meditation, he told me that he didn't like his food bowl. Okay, we own a bar and a restaurant, and my wife works on a Thursday night, and she was watching in the kitchen, and she was like, "Oh my God, I got to get Reggie a new food bowl." And we went and bought him a food bowl, and I swear, as soon as we put the food in there, he eats it. Whereas the food would be there like all day long, and he wouldn't eat it. Now we've bought him a new food bowl. He eats the food straight away. So, these things are just amazing. And the ability to communicate and be part with animals and everything else. And it would be really, really great to do that. Tell us a little bit about yourself then, Karen. Tell us a little bit about, your beliefs, your philosophies. How do you see spirit? Because, we talked about the good and the bad and the evil and the poltergeists and all those things. Yeah. You've had lots of experience over the years. How do you see spiritualism and spirituality? And what's your values and vision for this sort of movement, or not religion, or whatever you want to call it, really?
Well, I'm really excited about where it's going. But you see this uprise of TV shows, of talk shows, of radio shows, of podcast shows, all about the spirit on one regards another, whether it's ghost hunting, ghost chasing, even cryptozoology. People are really awakening to the other dimensions and wanting to explore it. So I'm really supporter of anybody that's doing that on any level. Doesn't matter if we're just beginning and starting and just you want to start up a podcast and talk about ghost, or you want to do a show like you're doing that talks more about spirit and communing with spirit and being part of spirit. I'm for that. I'd love to see this movement, because back in the 70s when I first started this work, and then even the 80s and 90s, I practiced as a therapist in the 90s for a good decade plus, that you really couldn't talk too much about this, that you would be considered a charlatan, you could lose your license. I didn't have anywhere to go. So I was in a vacuum with most of my work I was doing. I was so dedicated to the other dimensions because I experienced them first-handedly that I could never turn my back on it. So I love to see that people now are saying, yes, something exists. Even ufology, I love all that. So future, wonderful, us waking up to who we really are. And again, who we really are is a divine being that exists in spirit. We're just in a corporeal, we're in this suit we're wearing right now, but we're going to return right back to spirit. We're going to spend so much more time in spirit than we do here. We're like on vacation here. And sometimes the vacations are kind of nightmarish. It's not easy to be here. But the fact that we're here doing this and also now awakening to exploring it and awakening to our own abilities, I love that. So my background was, like I said, as a very young age, I saw spirit. I interacted with it, couldn't quite understand really what all that was until I got a little bit older, but never forgot it because it was so profound and so unconditionally loving to me that it was like something I kept with me, even though I was told, don't talk to make-believe people, all these things. And I've really worked through all that. And my parents are fantastic now. They support me, and so does my whole family. They finally get it. Everybody's awakening, as I said. But I come from a background where you couldn't do this. And to be able to open to this and talk to people about it and meet more people who are doing this, it's like being with a great, huge family that's evolving. Yeah, there's a lot more that needs to happen in the world in terms to awaken us. But I think we're seeing that. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it because the unrest we see in the world, I know we see it over at the UK. We see it in the EU. We see it in the United States. We see it around the whole world. All this unrest, all this fighting, all this underbelly being exposed, if you will. The underbelly is the shadow side to humanity is starting to be seen. And for that to be seen, you have to have this darkness to be brought up into light so you know and can see what all is really there. And through that process, there's this awakening and there is a light that's shining. So one of the things that Julian and I were talking about earlier is the whole notion of evil or demonic. And so what I say, I write about evil, by the way. I write about it in my books. My third book, I wrote extensively about it. I'm writing about it now in a project I'm working on as well. Evil to me is something that resides within the heart of man, the heart within humanoids, the heart of beings. And it could be on other planets, because I believe in the off-planetary life as well. It's something that exists within us. It's not our source DNA code. It's not what we're programmed with that we get from the one, all that is, source, God, the energy that you want, a universal energy. That's not what we came into this world, yet we have free choice. And through free choice, free will, we get to choose our experiences. And it's through contrast often, through dualism, through polarities, that we get to see what works and what doesn't work. And so we have this ability to choose. And it's not God or all that is that's turning its back on us. It's ourself that's kind of not allowing our own light to be seen. And so with this uprising, we're seeing this terrible stuff that's happening in the world. It's just horrible. There's a purpose and reason for it. And we have to see it further out to understand this is part of our progression. And so when I think about all these shows that are coming out about exposing the unseen dimensions, this is an aspect of it too. We're exposing ourselves. I'm very much of a Jungian background. That's my psychology background, in Jungian philosophy. I believe in archetypal energy. And if you could put the demon anywhere, it would be in this archetypal energy that we've constellated within our psyche that allows us to sometimes constellate it, bring it into our existence, and we become that ourselves. It's not this external force. We're not pawns to the world. We really are empowered beings. And so one of the things I really want to teach, and one of the things that hopefully I'm sharing the best that I can when I do my shows, is that we are very empowered beings and how to reawaken that empowerment. And again, this is through everything we're seeing in the world, everything we're seeing on these shows, by understanding there's more than meets the eye and more that we've been told. And for us to actually go out there and explore and discover it, we are empowering ourselves. And that's what I'm for. Those are my philosophies behind this work.
Amen. Full stop. That's fantastic, and you know what, it's so eloquently put. I think, and we're sort of 50 minutes into the show now, and we've got 10 minutes left. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to pop them up. But what I love about you, Karen, is that every time you speak, it comes from the soul. It is so authentic, and it is just so rich and empowering and loving that, you know, I'm just sort of hypnotized by the way you're eloquently putting across these things. And what's more impressive to me is you're actually starting with a tool that is so badly frowned upon, yet you can bring it so far the other way in terms of, you know, getting everyone to buy a Ouija board. So, you know, congratulations on that. Fantastic and really well done. And I appreciate it. So it is really true. And I can surely feel that.
Thank you.
How can we all then, how can we raise this vibration? How can we all, you know, bring spirituality and spiritualism to a wider audience? And I always spoke before, and, you know, one of my aims is to get, you know, wonderful people like you onto this platform to be able to say the words and stand up and do what you're doing, because it makes a huge difference. You know, I believe that there is no such thing as darkness. There is only an absence of light. Okay. And if you shine light into any darkness, it disappears. Okay. And a lot of the things you said there are right. I believe that, you know, we are the people that bring in evil. We are the people who decide to go left or right, to go good or bad. But in spirit, it's based on love. And, you know, when I go, some people say to me, "Oh, can you cleanse my house? I've got a terrible demonic spirit in this house." And I believe, and it'd be interesting to see how you believe, I believe that somebody previously who lived in that house had chosen a path of not being good. Their residual energy is still in the house. That doesn't mean it's going to harm anybody. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's not going to do anything. But you can, if you're a sensitive, you'll be able to feel this residual energy of the person who was there before. And that person might not have been a very nice person. But people get confused, I believe, with that being, oh, that's a demonic spirit. That's a really bad ghost. And I've got to move house. This is terrible. I don't, but I believe the other way. I believe you can just go in and clean that out and take the energy away, and then the house is fine. What are your views on things like that when you go to? Because I know you do some stuff in paranormal, and you do those sort of things as well. What are your? I know it's a bit of a long-winded question, but you know, what are your views on what I've just said?
Well, I like what you shared, I absolutely concur with everything you just said there. This is what I think. I think when we talk about spirituality, what we need to do first is not necessarily sit here in a lotus position and or meditate, which those will help. But what I say first is, what can we do with our own back porch? Can you sweep your own back porch first? So this means doing an internal cleansing of ourselves. Look at ourselves. It's not about blame or shame. It's about looking at ourselves. How can I empower and support myself? How can I find my true center? How can I find my true north? When you start doing this and empowering yourself, people say, well, how do you ward off evil stuff? You've got protection. And I say, well, you know what? I am my own protection. My work that I do on myself spiritually, but also how I am in the world with people, how I represent and show up. Do I take care of my own back porch first? Do I sweep it instead of trying to sweep somebody else's porch or somebody else's street? Sweep where I live first. Clean out those cobwebs. Look at myself. It's a constant thing, you guys. We're never done. We're never done doing this. It's a continual thing, but it's a beautiful thing because you start making friends with the parts within you. What I find is when people have such a negative, visceral experience with the board, they're typically projecting their own internal stuff and fears upon it. That's not to blame or shame. It's to say we need to look at ourselves first. There's no oogie boogie man out there to get you. You're going to get yourself first. You're going to be your worst critic. You're going to be your worst nightmare. You're going to be the one that degrades yourself. We have that internal talk. And so I'm saying, if you could look at yourself, go in, make friends with those parts of yourself that you're afraid to look at, whether it's the skeletons in the closet, it's the things you've chosen that maybe weren't the best. You know better now. It's being able to face that and being able to make friends with it. What I find is in everything within us, even the parts that are hard to look at, if you could do that first and accept it somehow and see it for the gem that it presents itself to you, the jewel it might give you, the clue it might give you, the friend it might become. And when you can accept that, you'll find that you become even stronger within. Then all of a sudden, you start to realize there aren't those negative energies out there. And if they are, as you just mentioned, Julian, you're able to go in and say, you know what? I release you. I help send you to the light. I think when we don't look at ourselves and cut off a part of ourselves, we will tend to go into these experiences where there is residual negative energy and cut it off and try to send it elsewhere. Well, that's not helping it. It's not helping raising it up into the light. That's what I do with myself. I find those parts of myself all the time that I don't necessarily like, and I work with raising that into the light. Again, if we can skeletons, not your experience anymore out here because it's going to shift. This is what you're going to attract more of, and your life does change. It all starts within, and that's how I believe you can really practice your spirituality.
Wow. I'm going to get out the sweeping brush and start my back porch the moment we finish this conversation.
And literally, guys, literally, sometimes if you just go clean your closet, seriously, literally, and maybe go sweep your back porch or clean out that one drawer you haven't cleaned out, it starts shifting things in your life. It becomes a metaphor. And then you go, this, I can tackle this. And then you take that idea and you go, maybe I can tackle that time that I suffered great abuse. Maybe it's time to look at that. Maybe I can tackle that time that I wasn't so nice to somebody. And then you start looking at these things and really your life starts shifting and you become empowered. So when I go to sleep and I have all my boards people are so afraid of hanging on my walls all over the place. I have them in my room. I have them right here. I have them with me all the time. I wear a Ouija board planchette. I have all this stuff. I don't get negative experiences because I feel this within first and then I approach my tool.
Amazing. Karen, I don't know how to thank you. I told you this hour would go quickly, and it certainly has. It's been amazing, and I know from the comments that we've had in the section here, people have absolutely loved everything you said. They 100% agree with you. The ability to choose is so true. The power from your soul, Karen, is so prominent. You are an amazing soul. Agree 100%. The list goes on and on and on and on. So thank you very much for being you, to be honest. And also thank you very much for shining such a positive light on the Ouija board. I hope and pray that Santa isn't too busy and he is one of the people who have been watching the show this evening, although I have sent my envelope in the chimney to him this evening for my own one. William James Smith says, and I think there's no other way of putting it, Karen is the real deal. You have been the real deal this evening.
Hi, you guys. I saw some things pop up. I didn't get a chance to answer. I'm not seeing the comments, by the way, but I love it when we get to interact. So hopefully, people are still posting things, although I didn't get to see them. But thank you guys for joining us and being here. I appreciate you being here.
No, and we always have a great audience, and they've been absolutely superb. And you've been superb as well. So, on behalf of everybody in the audience, on behalf of myself and everybody who works on That's the Spirit, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. God bless you. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep shining that light, and keep showing the positiveness of something that, unfortunately, in the world is shown as something that's not so positive. So keep shining that light, Karen. Good luck with everything, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Karen. Bye. What can I say? Another amazing episode of That's the Spirit with Karen A Dahlman. It was just amazing. And I just love the way, she spoke from the heart. She spoke from the soul. And she was so passionate and positive about something, unfortunately, that is maybe seen not in the right light within people's eyes. I hope this goes that little bit way as everything else she's doing to building and diminishing some of those perspectives. It's been a pleasure again. I thank you very much for tuning in. As always, it's been outstanding. Great comments, great numbers, great people. If you can share this program, that will be great. We have one more program before Christmas. Next week, we have another American medium, Suzanne Geisman, on. Suzanne's an amazing medium, and she will be another amazing show. And then, unfortunately, we have a little break. Well, we don't really, because we're pre-recording 2 interviews of myself. I'm being interviewed this time. Part 1 over Christmas and part 2 just after Christmas. So we're going to keep That's the Spirit going with some pre-recorded stuff because we all have to have a little bit of festive time off. But in the meantime, thank you very much. As always, as I say, if you can be love and give love, that would be amazing. Have a great week all. Once again, thank you very much for watching That's the Spirit. Take care. God bless and good night.